Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahashum, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahashum, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word and truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'm going to start it off in Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 30. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. And this Babylon is speaking of Babylon the Great, the United States of America. And those mighty men are those in the U.S. military. And as it says, their might hath failed and they have forborne to fight. And, I've done recent videos showing how you have Marines and, Navy personnel, not agreeing with this war with Iran and voicing their discontent with it. And, as I mentioned before, you had some of those U.S. Navy ships in the region, have to leave the area because sailors were clogging up the toilets with T-shirts and socks. Because again, you have a growing number of military personnel that don't want to fight in this war, but you have no say in the matter because it's all a part of biblical prophecy for the United States military to be one of the VIPs in World War III in the so-called Middle East, which is really Western Asia. And this war in Iran is just going to continue to escalate until it becomes what it's purposed to become, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat in Joel chapter 3, the War of Armageddon. But now I'm going to go to this video on Green Beret Chronicle Show's YouTube channel titled Sailors and Marines Revolting Over Deployment to Iran, just to further show that the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. And this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes, and I'm going to start it at the 8-minute and 32-second mark.
With all that said, guys, let's transition into the next topic, which is Marines, sailors. Apparently, they are defecting. This is how they're doing it. Take a listen.
Oh, absolutely. We have more than one client in the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, others who are out of Pendleton, that other Marine force that's being sent over. We have a client who's on a ship headed to the Middle East right now to be presumably part of an invasion force. So yes, just this weekend, we were dealing with at least 4 kind of rapid turnaround, like people who contacted us saying, I got 1 day, I just found out I'm deploying in a day or 2 days, and working with those people to file expedited claims so we can demand that their command do what's right and keep them home. And so absolutely, and I think the important thing is some people would think that, you can't just at the last minute say you're a CO and not be deployed. You absolutely can. You are entitled, service members have the right to submit a CO application at any time, right before a deployment, while they're on a deployment. People can file CO applications and have. This happened during the Iraq War. Infantry soldiers filing a CO when they are frontline combatants. And so, again, it's a right that people have that they don't know they have. And our job is to make sure people know that they have those rights.
Check it out, guys. If you want to go ahead and be a bitch, then go ahead and be a bitch, right? If you want to sign your name on a dotted line and then say, you know what, I don't want to do this, once shit gets real, by all means, you make your decision.
And hey, that's the case with a lot of you Israelites who've joined the military. You so-called Negroes especially, so-called Latinos and Native Americans. You're not joining it because you're super patriotic, though, this guy, he's clearly a coon, but you're not joining it because you're super patriotic or, you want to spread democracy or really, the plans of the oligarchs out here to grape, rob, and murder people's resources. You're joining because you want that college tuition money, a Mustang, or a used up white girl. But hey, now that you've joined, best believe that for the majority of you out there, your ass, if you don't come across this video and repent and try to get out of the military is going to be sent over into that land barren and desolate, Western Asia, as it says in Joel 3:9 and Joel 2:20, which we're going to get, to become a permanent fixture over there during the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. But as we just heard in this video, you've got growing numbers of Marines and sailors looking for ways to get out of doing their service. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. Their might hath failed them. And as Green Beret Chronicles said, hey, if you want to be a bitch, go ahead and be my guest. What did it also say in Jeremiah 51 verse 30? They became as women. And when the shit gets real, hey, you don't want to, like the saying goes, you don't want to shit in the pot, you want to get off of it. And then also too, even with a lot of the more patriotic U.S. service members, a lot of them are seeing that this war is just over propping up the state of Israel in that region. And they don't want to be a foot soldier, a pawn for the state of Israel, because lest we forget, just recently, with this U.S.-Israeli-Iran conflict, the Israelis said, hey, we're not going to commit boots to the ground. So it's all just, the okie doke for your U.S. soldiers to continue to be used as pawns for the greater Israel project. But, I'm going to jump to the 11-minute and 53-second mark, just to further show you, how real the situation is getting out here.
With that decision. With all that said, guys, let's transition into the next topic, which is the age limit within the military has just increased. And people are freaking out because they think that this is World War III. We need bodies, right? Let's take a listen and I'll give you guys my...
And hey, they're right to think that, because World War III will happen. And, for all intents and purposes, you can say, we're in the beginning of World War III, which is going to culminate into the War of Armageddon, which, as I also did a lesson on, U.S. commanders, they told some of their soldiers that, look, you're going to be a soldier fighting in the War of Armageddon. But this is Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I. And behold, there come two woes more hereafter, World War II, and of course, World War III, which, as it further says in Revelation 11, verse 14, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Hence why they're already preparing to raise the enlistment age, but best believe a draft is coming down the pipeline as well. Salaki, I'm in a little bit of a dead zone right now.
If you're thinking about joining the Army, but you think you're too old, or maybe you even have a marijuana conviction, think again. Middle age will soon no longer be a barrier to enlisting in the Army. Starting on April 20th, the maximum age for new recruits will increase from 35 years old all the way up to 42 years old. The move brings the Army in line with...
And remember, over in Ukraine, they moved up the age for soldiers up into the late 40s, and also, the age for people to join that on the younger side to, I believe, like 16, because they're just getting slaughtered out there and just need warm bodies. It's going to be no different with this conflict with Iran.
The Air Force and the Space Force, while the Navy and the Coast Guard cap recruits at 41 years old. The Marines remains the most restrictive with the cutoff age of 28. The Army says that it made a similar change during a recruitment slump about 2 decades ago, but this time it is not temporary. And another change, recruits with a single conviction for marijuana and drug paraphernalia will no longer need a waiver to join.
What do you guys thought about this, guys?
And I'll stop it right there because, he's going to talk about his time in Iraq, which I read a book, I think it was called like A Regular Army or something like that. They're talking about during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, since it was enlistments, you had them, as that lady just said, lowering a lot of the, restrictions, such as drug convictions, mental health issues, physical issues, because they needed warm bodies to fight in those unpopular wars. So hence why they're doing similar things now. But eventually there will be a draft, which is also a part of biblical prophecy. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 16 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to read verses 33 to 34. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. Women destitute of having men to take care of them. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine. So right there, in the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed. Men, as we're seeing, of all ages getting drafted to go fight and die in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, leaving a bunch of single ladies over here in the United States of America. Vulnerable to the wolves that are still going to be left over here. But this is Isaiah chapter 3, verses 25 to 26, which is dealing with you Israelite women, especially, the women of the Southern Kingdom, or so-called Black, Negro, African-American woman. You Israelite women are the only ones that have a chance of being saved when those wolves come out on the streets of America due to a lack of men and a lack of law and order out here, by getting under a man of the Lord. If we go to the next chapter, it begins with one of the most unpopular scriptures in the Bible, Isaiah 4:1. 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our bread and wear our own apparel, only take away our reproach. Well, hey, that's the only way, you Israelite women are making it out of here on this side. But if you still want to be strong and independent and a boss bitch that can take on, any man coming your way, well, hey, every dog's about to get his day or her day. But this is Isaiah chapter 3, verses 25 to 26. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. So another verse talking about, such a great number of men being taken in wars that women will be, lonely, afraid, and, just completely vulnerable out here. But now I'm going to go to Joel chapter 2, verse 20. Because for those of you that are in the U.S. military right now, especially you Israelites, this is the only thing you've got to look forward to. Not a retirement plan. Well, yeah, you are going to get a retirement plan in the soil of, the Middle East over there. This is Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, the U.S. military, all branches, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, so-called Middle East, Western Asia, with his face toward the East Sea. And when you look at a map of the Middle East, looking from the view of Saudi Arabia, which is going to be the main staging ground for this conflict, what do you have to the east? The Persian Gulf, and above it, Iran. And then to the northeast, you've got Iraq, which the U.S. has a military presence there, as well as the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They're also talking about Iranian, Iraqi proxies planning on getting involved in this conflict. And then a little further south, of the Persian Gulf, what do you have? The Strait of Hormuz, a major piece of contention right now, which, they're talking about that ceasefire, but things are happening so rapidly that it's just going, back and forth with talks of, it's already been violated, threats by Iran to, destroy unauthorized ships, etc., etc. Just showing you that it's the Lord's will, for this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat to take place. And as it says, his hinder part or behind him toward the utmost sea, the Red Sea, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things, a great slaughter of U.S. military personnel in that region. Again, going back to 2nd Esdras 16 and Isaiah chapter 3, the virgins and the women shall mourn because their bridegrooms were destroyed in the wars, and the women shall lament because thy young men and thy mighty were destroyed in the wars. But now, I'm going to go to this article on endtimesheadlines.org titled, Iran threatens to destroy ships that pass through Strait of Hormuz despite ceasefire. Like I just said, it's the Lord's determination for this war to intensify. And, we're constantly seeing back and forth, peace, ceasefires and all that. But best believe this thing is not going to come to a full stop, and things, won't go back to normal. The 90s are over. Iran has warned it may attack foreign vessels attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without its approval. And also Iran's been saying, we want to charge $1 worth of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency now per barrel that comes through the strait, despite recently announcing a ceasefire agreement with the United States, according to reporting by the New York Post. The threat appears to contradict claims from President Donald Trump. Tehran had agreed to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the critical shipping route as part of the temporary truce. Instead, Iranian officials signaled that any transit through the strait would remain under their control and subject to military coordination. Iran threatened to destroy any foreign vessels attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without its permission, the report said, and underscoring ongoing tensions even after the ceasefire announcement, which, immediately after the ceasefire, you had Israel do strikes on Lebanon, which one of the things Iran was talking about was, look, no more further strikes on us, or no more further strikes on Lebanon. While the ceasefire has been framed as a step toward de-escalation, Iran has indicated it may only allow limited access to the strait. Officials suggested that ships could pass through under strict oversight, warning that failure to comply could lead to further confrontation. Iran claimed it might allow a limited access under its control and insisted military coordination with Tehran would be mandatory, the article noted. The fragile agreement, brokered with the international involvement, including mediation efforts by Pakistan, has drawn cautious optimism from global leaders. However, uncertainty remains high as both sides signal readiness to resume hostilities if negotiations fail. Remember Revelation 11 verse 14. The second woe is past, and the third woe cometh not slowly, but quickly. Now I'm going to end it off with this clip from Bricks News' exit post. Just in, White House says President Trump rejected Iran's 10-point plan and threw it in the garbage. But, if I remember correctly, Trump was saying, look, Iran has a 10-point plan, and, it's well within, it's well within what we want to do. But as we're about to see in this clip, things aren't so, copacetic in paradise. Again, it's the Lord's determination to gather the nations, as it says in Zephaniah 3 verse 8, to burn them with the fire of his jealousy. ultimately those nuclear missiles that are going to be fired during World War III. But again, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Seen a lot of inaccurate coverage today from the media about these negotiations and these plans already. So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false. I've seen a lot of inaccurate coverage today from the media about these negotiations and these plans already. So let me be clear and correct the record. The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
Well, there you have it. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere, Akim, and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time.